Interested in ghosts? UFOs? How about the occult? Are you psychic? Would you like to find out? Well, if you're intrigued by the world's curiosities and all that is paranormal, then Paralore.com is a place for you. Create your own profile, start a photo album, write a blog, or just hang out and watch countless hours worth of paranormal videos while chatting with other Paralore members. Who knows? You could win a prize or two if you're quick and brave enough. It's all here, and it's all free. Visit www.paralore.com and join today. Again, membership is free, and we know you won't be disappointed.
Paralore.com. Unlock your
mind. Wondering where you can get the latest news and reviews from the world of paranormal entertainment? Frank and Laura take a look at the latest happenings and break down what's new on TV and at the movies each week on Spooktacular, your paranormal entertainment roundup. Check them out by searching for Spooktacular in iTunes or head on over to Spooktacular.com. Oh yeah, be sure to bring along a friend because no one should listen alone.
I'd like to share a recent experience where I strongly believe that I encountered a shadow person.
When I looked, it was January 5th, 2046.
I just, I want to find an explanation for it. I want to rule it out as, something that was logical.
There are many things we have yet to learn about and understand. Join us here at Supernatural Existence and learn about the many mysteries of the universe. Feel free to subscribe via any of your favorite podcast directories, including iTunes, or check us out on the Supernatural Existence website at www.glowby.com. The mysteries are waiting to be understood.
I really want to see something supernatural with my own eyes, not hear it or think I heard it or anything like that, actually see it with my own eyes, capture it on camera, hear something weird or something like that.
Arr! Hey, it's Wolfman Mac from Wolfman Mac's Nightmare Cinema. We're hanging out at the Haunted Winery here in Warren, Michigan with the good folks from Ghostly Talk. Ooh, this place is creepy, man, but nowhere near as creepy as Wolfman Mac's Nightmare Cinema. It's a haunted drive-in, babies. And you know what we do there? We host classic B horror and sci-fi movies, just like the ones you grew up with when you was a kid. And it's at Wolfman Mac's Nightmare Cinema right now, hosting on public access TV all over Metro Detroit. But guess what, kiddies? It's coming to you, and all you got to do is have a computer. Just go to Wolfman Mac's Nightmare Cinema. It's nightmarecinema.com. We'll be broadcasting the show real soon, right from the website. Stay tuned. It's Wolfman Mac, Nightmare Cinema. Bye.
Nightmare Cinema.
You're listening to Ghostly Talk.
This will be the Ghostly Talk Hour of Chaos.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Because
we've done this before.
We have.
With more.
Yes, we have.
I think we should do this.
That sounded bad.
Let's hope this goes well. But I do want to learn all about these folks. Monster Talk is the podcast sibling of MonsterScience.org. Their goal is to examine the science behind various cryptozoological and legendary creatures. When possible, they interview the scientists who have sounded in on these issues. They want to give skepticism more than its usual 1 to 5 minutes of lip service it would get on a typical television documentary.
The
website, www.monstertalk.org, and, of course, monsterscience.org.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got 3 folks up for you.
Yeah.
Scott, let's introduce the first one.
Blake Smith is a writer and researcher of matters cryptozoological and paranormal. He's been interested in the mysterious for decades and has been a formal skeptic, and the word formal is in quotes here.
Which is very formal.
Yeah, very formal. Of such claims since 1997. His conversation from believer to casual doubter to formal doubter was a lengthy process. This sounds very familiar. We've discussed this, haven't we, Doug? The first steps of which were reading the works of Jan Harold Brabant, I think I got it right, and his highly entertaining works on urban legends. His research has been primarily in ghosts, UFOs, and mystery animals. You can find his articles on monsterscience.org, DrAtlantis.com, and on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
God, he's everywhere.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Bonnie, who else are here?
Dr. Karen Stolzno is an academic, author, and paranormal investigator of the skeptical kind. She is a linguist with a background in history and anthropology. She has spent many years researching and road-testing beliefs and practices, including ghosts, psychics, and alternative therapies.
I wondered when
I knew it was going to happen.
It was on its way.
One of her specialties is fringe linguistic phenomena, such as, say it, Doug.
Glossolalia?
Thank you. Which apparently is
or
speaking in tongues.
Speaking in tongues.
I can't even say tongues. I give up.
Automatic writing, graphology, alien and monster languages, and writing systems, electronic voice phenomena, and cold reading.
And stereo speaking.
Speaking in male and female voices.
Who else do we have on the phone?
I would also like to introduce Ben Radford. Benjamin Radford is managing editor of 2 science magazines, The Skeptical Inquirer and the Spanish language Pensar. Although that's probably pronounced Spanishly, and Bonnie has forbidden me to try any foreign languages, so I'll just say Pensar. He has written more than 300 articles on various topics, including urban legends, mass hysteria, mysterious creatures, and media criticism. His columns appear in the Carlisle Comment newspaper and Skeptical Inquirer, as well as on the web at livescience.com and scicop.org. So everybody, we've got monsterscience.org and monstertalk.org. Put those in your web browsers right now. Get familiar with it, because we get to meet the crew from Monster Talk. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks. Hello.
Yeah, I hope that you guys are not mad at us.
I apologize in advance.
We destroy every bio. We try our best, and we always seem to screw it up. But obviously, you guys are doing a show, like we said before. It's a podcast. Now, obviously, from just the bios we read, you guys are coming kind of from not a different viewpoint, but it's more of a skeptical viewpoint. Am I correct?
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was going to say, because Dr. Karen, I love your accent, so I want to pick on you and say, why? What is it that? See, because I see the skeptical side of science, or of that,
or
of
the
these
paranormal
topics. I mean,
yeah.
I see that as being very safe, and because obviously, even believers can't prove any of this stuff. All we have to go on is story after story after story, and so it's very, very difficult to prove these things. So what is it about Monster Talk that says, okay, we are so skeptical, we're skeptical about it. We're definitely trying to do it scientifically, and can it ever take all these stories into account that we hear throughout the world, throughout the ages? Can we ever put those into a category and say these are all bunk, or hey, these guys, we just don't know what's going on?
You're going to have to isolate one question there for me, I think. That was a whole bunch of questions.
I understand.
You think that it's safe to be taking a skeptical perspective on these particular stories? Is that what you've said?
Well, I do. I do think that it's relatively safe, and because
I think it's actually confrontational. Really, I think that a lot of believers don't like to do that. They don't take the skeptical approach, and to me, that's being a bit safe and just treating these as stories as narrative instead.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
I think that it is safe that way, too. But it's kind of safe on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, and Dr. Karen just kind of laid that down for us, I mean, yeah, whatever camp you're going to sit on here, and I mean, we don't turn this into like a football game here, but I mean, whatever camp
I want to
you're
learn. That's what I'm doing here.
But whatever camp you're in, it's going to be safe because you're going to go, look, I believe in it. Well, look, I don't believe in it. I want to look into this more further before we make any definite conclusions. Well, we've made conclusions. We think it's real, and back and forth and back and forth. So I guess, like you just said, Dr. Karen, I mean, it would be safe on either side of the field. Being skeptical, however, though, it really does come with a lot of controversy, I think. And I see this all the time, people who do come from a skeptical point of view. And we've been on ghost hunts before or investigations where I personally, somebody like, oh, my God, I was just touched by something, right? And I go, okay, so what touched you? Well, I felt something on my shoulder. Well, okay, was there a wind? Maybe you bumped into something. Maybe you bumped into somebody else. Maybe somebody just, touched you accidentally. I mean, there's a million different things. And I've met. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've met a lot of opposition on that. And that's why I can identify with what Dr. Karen was saying is that there is a lot of controversy being a skeptic. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is Blake. There's an easy way to look at it. You could say, well, that's the safe, easy way to take that position because if you put the burden of proof on people who make claims, well, then it's easy to say, well, prove it, and there's no body for Bigfoot, for example. There's no DNA for Bigfoot. So it's easy to say, well, all the people who are seeing something, it's their imagination or it's a bear or whatever. But the truth is every single claim has to be evaluated separately and on its own merits, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to do. And the other thing we're trying to do is because we've seen so much interest in monsters on television and on the internet and in the news, we're trying to use that as a jumping point to get the hard science out there. So like in our most previous episode, we were looking at Nessie, and specifically we were looking at people who think Nessie might be a plesiosaur. So we brought in a paleontologist who's an expert in plesiosaurs to talk about what science can actually tell us about plesiosaurs. It was really interesting to see how that as science has developed, just learn more about the real behavior of these animals, and it's become inconsistent with the Nessie stories. That doesn't mean Nessie's not real.
Yeah.
It does, or any of that, but it does mean that we can learn about what Nessie isn't by studying the hard science. So.
Yeah, I was interesting. What you said about being safe interested me because I think that the safe thing is on either side of the spectrum. It's safe to say, well, ghosts are ridiculous, Bigfoot is ridiculous, or on the other side to say, well, these things are obviously there. But if you're going to go into it with an open-minded perspective, that's inherently unsafe because you don't know what you're going to find. And if you follow the evidence, which I think, certainly us skeptics would agree is the way to go about it, ultimately, because you go in looking for the evidence and following that instead of in trying to support a preconceived conclusion, that is inherently unsafe because you don't know where it's going to lead you. I mean, on any ghost investigation I do, or lake monster hunt, what have you, I'm open to the possibility that I will find it. So I'm sort of and because to my mind, the ultimate goal is truth and finding out if it's there, if it's not there. So I think the safe thing is on either end of the spectrum, but the unsafe, much more interesting to my mind area is in the middle ground with doing real skeptical investigations.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I think that that's where we all would stretch our previous knowledge, our learning, our scientific skills, our spiritual skills. It would be a stretch to go in and really, really dig in, not coming from any specific viewpoint.
Well, we've been saying it for years here. Well, go ahead.
The one thing I really want to ask, because it just occurred to me that Blake, Karen, and Ben, you must see this pattern happen a lot, because I've noticed it, and I really, really want to know, is there a psychological or a sociological something that causes this? Somebody sees a monster, right? I saw Bigfoot. Or I saw Mothman. We're going to the Mothman Festival this upcoming weekend.
Or Scott L. Naked.
Or Scott L. Naked. So we see something, right? Somebody
That's a monster, all right.
They describe...
You asked for it, Bonnie. You walked right into it.
Hey, I've never asked for that.
I'm trying to get through my question.
Sorry, Ben. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So somebody sees it, they report it, right? Yeah. And they say, "Oh my gosh, I've seen this thing," and maybe they do a police report, maybe they just start telling friends. Eventually, it gets out, right? All of a sudden, you start hearing more and more and more reports. It's like somebody had said, I saw Mothman in West Virginia, right? It was a couple. They were out driving around, probably, at Lover's Lane.
That's
or
where
whatever.
They were at, exactly.
Yeah, and we saw Mothman. All of a sudden, the whole town is plagued with Mothman sightings. The whole countryside is plagued. It sort of ballooned. Is there a phenomenon, like a sociological or a psychological phenomenon, like Me Too theory going on? What is it that does that? I don't know specifically who to ask. So whoever jumps in first.
I think Ben says his background.
Yeah. I've actually done a fair amount of research on this in my latest book called Lake Monster Mysteries. I actually investigated a really interesting case of exactly this, and there's a lake monster, or I should say alleged lake monster, in Lake Champlain, which borders Vermont, New York. And the most famous creature, it's America's so-called Loch Ness Monster, and the most famous photograph of it was taken in 1977 by a woman named Sandra Mancy. But what's interesting is that if you look at the sighting reports of Champ, they spike not in 1977 when Mancy took the photo and saw the creature basically for the first time. They spike after 1981 when it was first published.
Oh.
And so what that means, of course, is that the giant spike in sightings, when it's in people's consciousness, when it's in the newspaper, in fact, it was in the New York Times, when people are thinking about it, they're seeing it. And so to my mind, that provides very strong evidence of a cultural and sociological explanation for these sightings, because if it was simply people all seeing the same thing, then you would expect that there would have been a whole bunch of sightings around the same time that Mancy saw in 77. But oddly enough, or perhaps not oddly enough, depending on how you look at it, it makes perfect sense that once it's out there, once people are talking about it, then basically anything that they see that they can't explain or they think is unusual is automatically going to be considered to be a lake monster or a champ in that case.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I mean, we've been saying this for years here. I was going to say this a minute ago. We've been saying it concerning ghost research in particular. If you want to see ghosts, I'll show you ghosts. It's very simple. I mean, it is a psychological thing, and we've seen this happen before to people where you pump somebody up with a bunch of, you get, where we're going is one of the most haunted places in America. This place is so haunted, this person won't even go in there, and this station, TV station, said they were there, and they ran out screaming, and they lost a camera, and there was 15 axe murderers here. So you get somebody who's never went and done this kind of work before, not saying that they're weak of mind, but they've never done this kind of work before, it's going to put the spook in them, right? And then they're going to, as you guys very well know, they're going to go there, and I've seen this happen personally. Everything that they hear or feel or see is paranormal in nature, and it's probably a ghost. That's another way of looking at that, and it's the same thing you're kind of talking about, Ben, because you're kind of publishing that right in that person's mind right there. It's the same type of thing, obviously with different types of phenomena, but...
So it's like a fertilizer for the
It's front-loading. It's front-loading. That's what you're doing to somebody. You're front-loading them. I mean, EVPs, we talk about front-loading all the time and stuff like that.
Yeah, I call it being primed. That's the same
there
thing.
There you go. Same thing, yeah. Front-loading, prime.
In psychology, they call it expected attention.
What was that again?
In psychology, they call it expected attention. So where you're expecting to see something, and if you see ambiguous phenomena, then you'll interpret it to fit what you've been. It's same with EVPs. You tell somebody, doesn't this sound like someone saying, "Gee, Jake, come find me"? And everyone says, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like." But if you didn't prime them, then you're going to get a dozen different interpretations.
Exactly, and that's why the whole EVP thing. There have been the classification scales we've heard about, and I kind of agree with those things, because if it's something that you can hear and hear it clearly without anybody manipulating the audio or having to bring up levels here or play with all the bells and whistles in audition, then it may be something that might be you might want to look into. But again, when you have to front load somebody, especially with EVPs, I don't think I don't want to listen to it. Then we've had that millions of times here on the show where people have had to do that for us right here on the air. Unfortunately, kind of sucks.
Right, and they have to tell us.
So go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was wondering. Okay, so we've got a feel of each of you, and I'm really, really happy about that. We got a feeling for where you're coming from, what you're looking at, what you're doing. But tell us about Monster Talk, the show.
Let's hear about it.
How did it even come to be?
I think that's my fault.
I blame Blake.
I think it was a happy accident then.
Yeah. I have been a long-time podcast listener. I think I started listening to a couple of podcasts at the same time, I guess in about 2007, maybe late 2006. The Canadian Broadcasting has Quirks and Quarks, which is a science show. And there's a show called Skepticality, which showed up when I was looking for science shows. And that turned out to be right here from my hometown of Atlanta. And that was the first time I had found out there were other people who were like-minded as far as being skeptical of stuff. And I realized, well, I'm a computer guy. This is my day job is IT. And this podcasting thing seems pretty easy. So I started to read, listen, and I decided there's, I don't want to get into all the details, but basically microcasting, the idea of targeting a smaller audience for a specific kind of information. I thought, well, what's really not being done here is anything for cryptozoology on the skeptical side. So there's lots and lots of ghost shows, and like your fine show, but not so much on the monsters. And so it seemed maybe like a dozen Bigfoot talks, but I wanted to do something that could kind of target a variety of science issues using monsters as a springboard, and kind of being a sort of a long-form counterpoint to Monster Quest on the History Channel. So that was the idea, and I happened to have met Mr. Radford and Dr. Stolzo from DragonCon, which they have the Skeptics track there for a couple of years running, and I decided to give them an invite and see if they wanted to participate. So we're all really busy, but this is something we've been able to squeeze into our schedules, and it seems to be working pretty well.
Oh yeah, and you guys, I didn't get that. Let me get this clear. You guys are all local to each other, so you guys can all...
No, they're all over the country,
so
man.
You're doing this, yeah. Dude, I have to...
That's got to be really hard.
I take my hat... Because we know of several other shows that do the same thing, where they broadcast, they kind of all, Skype together or do whatever it is. And, I know for a fact, Doug and I have been doing this thing, we're on our 8th year now, and when he's not here or I'm not here or whatever, we
it's
talk to each other.
It's doubly difficult.
Yeah, it's
when,
difficult. We're
when
used
one
to
of
doing
us
it that
is
way.
not in the studio.
So I take my hat off to you guys for being able to do a show, a fine show like you guys do, so far away from each other, and being able to do this all basically with the wonders of the internet.
I think time zone is the biggest problem.
What's that?
Time zone is the biggest problem.
Oh, that I can believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we've had guests on from Ireland and New Zealand.
And bless their heart. Well,
and some of them were
bless their heart. They're up in the middle of the night to talk to us.
Yeah,
just so they can come on the show live. So, and basically, as far as and like you said a second ago, Blake, you're more or less microcasting to a very small, and I hate to use the word demographic, but this is a very kind of small niche that you're talking to. The thing I'm wondering about is one of the things go ahead, Doug.
Well, Blake, one of the things that I notice is that when they do a TV show, we've only got a minute or something before.
2 minutes. You got 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay. When they do a TV show on the History Channel or the Haunted Channel or whatever channel, when they do a TV show like that, they're doing it for absolutely everybody on the planet who could possibly watch their channel, trying to interest everybody. In order to get advertising funding, it makes sense. It's business, right? So when they do a show, they try and get a few skeptics, a few believers, and a few people that say everybody's a crackpot. So they do that, but you're targeting, and I really like that. You're targeting skeptics or people who are questioning the status quo. Who is your audience then?
If I could pick my audience, I'd pick anybody 14 and up who was interested in monsters and didn't know that there was a lot of good science they could learn. That's basically it. So.
Okay. The scientific side of monsters.
Well,
that's right.
We're going to go. Let's take a quick break here again, all right? When we come back, though, I do want to touch on this thing, because this is one thing that you mentioned, Blake, specifically, and I think this is interesting to talk about, is skepticism versus being skeptical. These are two different things, apparently. And I want to learn that because, I consider myself very skeptical in a lot of situations nowadays.
Absolutely.
So I think it'd be very interesting to talk about that. Let's take a quick break. This is Ghostly Talk. I'm Scott.
And I'm Doug.
And I'm Bonnie.
We'll be right back after this.
Ghostly Talk!
Paranormal investigation groups all over the world are looking for answers. We hope they let the chance to get even the tiniest peek at who or what is on the other side. CPR, or Cooperative for Paranormal Research, is one of these groups. We are dedicated to finding the answers, dedicated to finding evidence of the paranormal, and dedicated to proving that some places are truly haunted.
The Darker Side of the Moon is an alternative talk variety show. DarkerSideRadio.com. Since 2006, host Becky Ray and Laura Moon speak with independent filmmakers, authors, musicians, artists, and many, many more.
DarkerSideRadio.com.
Sometimes serious, mostly fun, the show has a little for everyone.
DarkerSideRadio.com.
Was it odd, freaky, and you didn't hear it on the 5 o'clock news? Then we'll probably cover it here.
DarkerSideRadio.com.
Darker Side currently airs live Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 7 p.m. Central and 5 p.m. Pacific.
DarkerSideRadio.com.
If you happen to miss it, you can listen to show archives at any time online at DarkerSideRadio.com, or you may subscribe to the show on iTunes.
DarkerSideRadio.com.
Hi, this is Luke.
And this is Tobin from Quest Research.
Hey, Tobin, what do you get when four guys with absolutely no video experience whatsoever decide to produce their own online paranormal TV show?
I don't know. What? Oh, wait. I do know. Ghost Diaries, right?
That's right.
You can check us out and get involved at www.questresearch.net. And the good thing about being new is that we will only get better.
The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television.
We are back. Don't forget, all music on Ghostly Talk is independently produced and put out there for...
That was a band called Raised Fist, actually.
Really?
From
Raised Fist.
Not Raised
Fish?
Fist.
Oh.
Raised Fish.
Yeah,
from the ocean.
Why?
No.
Why would you raise a fish?
Raised Fist from Sweden. They're a really cool band.
Excellent.
Let's use their music.
We're talking with the crew from Monster Talk. That's www.monstertalk.org. Of course, we're science of monsters. I mean, monsters have thrilled us since we were like little kids. They say, don't go outside. There's a monster. There's a monster under your bed, and they're trying to control you.
I want to get into this skepticism thing we talked about before the break. I really want to dive into this because I think this is really, really important. And I'm just going to quote off this thing. Skepticism versus being skeptical. What does it mean when you self-define as a skeptic versus engaging in intermittent skeptical thinking? Obviously a mouthful. Blake, you sent this one over. I really want to get into this because it's two different things. So... being the term skepticism versus being skeptical. What I say, for example, just to roll things off, I mean, I tend to say things, now I'm very skeptical about that thing, because I think, for example, if somebody gives us a photo of anything, a ghost or what they think might be a UFO or something like that, I go, well, the first thing that goes off in my mind is, well, it could have been this thing or that thing or this thing or that thing, depending on what the photo looks like, right? You think it's a healthy mindset when it comes to evaluating evidence, Blake?
Well, I do. Having lived on the other side of the fence of just sort of thinking that everything I read was true for a while, I find it refreshing to think the other way. But it wasn't like I flipped a switch one day and decided that I didn't believe everything I read or heard.
Yeah.
There's kind of an erosive process. There's a building up process of building a belief set, and there's kind of a building up process or destructive process eroding that belief set and building a new one. So I guess inside American, there's a lot of subcultures. There's this subculture of formal skeptics, and that's kind of what I became aware of through podcasting. And I discovered I was already thinking that way after about a 10-year journey of looking into a lot of different mysteries on my own.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to find people who, every single thing they hear, or most everything they hear, they evaluate, is that really true? And that could not just paranormal claims, but things they read in the newspaper or things they hear on the television.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's a difference between people who formally identify as skeptics and people who experience moments of skepticism. Just like there's probably moments when I'm credulous about stuff I probably shouldn't be. But, and I said, I don't usually do that, but there I go.
No, I think there are different kinds of skeptics too. People will say that skeptics are cynics and skeptics believe in conspiracy theories, and then there are more formal skeptics. I think all of those types exist. They're all out there, different kinds of skeptics, and I think that the kinds of skeptics that we are, we're part of a formal, well, not necessarily formal or organised in any way, but it is a culture or a movement that exists.
It is, and let me throw this out too. It's been around for 40 years, I guess. I guess maybe if we go back to Martin Gardner, I'm not sure what year that started. But there's a new, what they're calling skepticism 2.0. That's kind of arisen out of all of the Facebook and Twitter and all the Web 2.0 tool sets. That all these skeptics who have this mindset are meeting each other for the first time on the internet, and it's really interesting what's kind of coming out of that. So,
a real community.
That's right.
Well, I have to throw this out there because I think I may have said this on the show before. And it sounds like we've had kind of the same journey, Blake. I know when I started doing this stuff many years ago, now, it feels like many years ago, I did believe everything, I saw or what I read. And I wasn't, it's taken many years for me, where I went to the skeptical type of viewpoint where, I wanted to evaluate things a lot more. Unfortunately, I heard the word cynic come up a second ago, I have been pushed into that direction, unfortunately.
So have I.
Where, I sometimes, in a lot of situations, I'll be honest, I'm cynical about things now, where, literally, we talk to people, or, somebody sends something to us, and, oh my God, my house is so haunted. I got demons crawling out of the walls. There's blood coming out of the toilet.
Everyone has a demon.
And I go, right. Because we have investigated these claims before, and we get there, and all you hear is crickets chirping usually. Nothing's ever really going on. So, what I want to ask you also from this community, as you guys are part of this community, is that going too far? Is that an unhealthy mindset to be in, and should I straighten my act up, more or less? Because sometimes I feel like I'm not being fair with people, unfortunately. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that I think that you need to be able to go into investigation open-minded, and when you're going into something, you have to be cognizant of the track record here. You can't go into a haunted house investigation not knowing anything about the history of what other haunted houses other ghost phenomena turned out to be. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to draw upon the experience of other solved cases, excuse me, which also, of course, includes as you said, going into house after house after house after house and finding normal explanations or finding nothing. But if you go into it, to debunk, then I think you're taking it too far. So for example, for me personally, I don't like the word debunker. I don't necessarily debunk things. I go into it, trying to find out what's going on. And if you go into it with the mindset that, this is all ridiculous, this is wasting my time, then you're already closed-minded to it. But nor can you go into it saying, anything they give to me is going to be good proof. So I think that as long as you're going into it with an open mind, you're doing, you're at least starting out on the right foot.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Blake. What were you going to say?
Well, you really heard me. That was good. People like to tell stories, and so people will often say something like, "My house is really haunted. You can tell because of this," right? But a skeptic's approach should be something like, "Okay, wait. What exactly are the claims you're making? What exactly are the events that you're seeing? What's the phenomena?" And then we'll figure out what's going on. Because if you start with "my house is haunted and here's how I can prove it," then you've already got your conclusion, which is, I think, is what Ben was saying. But it's right. A nuanced answer, but it makes all the difference in the world, especially if you don't want to become cynical, because you're always looking at a mystery every single time, even though you may know the answer is maybe that's not a ghost. But what is it? What's causing it? And maybe you can help find out what's causing somebody to be afraid of their own house.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, let me throw one other comment, which is that Karen and Blake and I and other skeptics see this all the time. I'm continually confronted with people who are ghost hunters and monster investigators, psychic researchers, et cetera, who one of the first things they tell me is, I'm a skeptic. I follow science. I'm a scientist. I'm a skeptic. And having dealt personally with dozens of ghost groups across the country, all of them virtually, I have yet to find one that doesn't consider themselves in some significant way skeptical or call themselves skeptics. But oftentimes, if you look at their research methodologies, if you look at their so-called investigation reports, you find there's virtually no skepticism and there's no scientific methodology to it at all. So so a lot of the ghost groups and monster hunters and other paranormal so-called experts as well, they love to call the skeptics. They love to call themselves skeptics. They love to put on the appearance of science. But if you look underneath the surface, most of the time there's nothing of the sort.
People, we've said this before, and it ties right in with what we're talking about right now. A lot of people out there nowadays they throw around the word science like draft beer at a keg party. It's like it's people, and I don't know if you guys know where I'm coming from on this, but I've run into this too, where people say, well, we're a scientific group of people, whether it's cryptozoology or ghost hunting, we adhere to scientific guidelines. I go, great, you know what the scientific method is then? We need to get a theory.
We'll get back with you on that.
What the hell are you talking about? I mean, a lot of people, they love again, you get into this field, and here we go again. We're going to run right over the hurdles here. Obviously, the paranormal, whether it's cryptozoology or ghost hunting or ufology, let's be honest, the barriers to entry to get into this field are very, very low. And I'm going to keep ramming this into people's heads for as long as this show goes on. The barriers to entries are very, very low. So it's very easy to say, well, I'm a scientist. I'm a paranormal investigator, and I'm a scientist. Well, who the hell's going to argue with that? I mean, you can say it all you want, but
people love their labels.
They love their labels, like we've been saying for years on this show. They love to use the word scientific because, let's be frank, the word scientific, I mean, it says something. It's a powerful word, right? I'm sorry, Blake. Go ahead.
Are you saying I'm not really a doctor from Atlantis?
But no, do you guys see what I'm saying? Do you see?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I hear this. I've heard the same things. Well, we're very skeptical. We have a very skeptical viewpoint. We'll talk about being safe. There you go. Well,
they get to hide behind the words, but not do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's kind of obviously grinding my craw a little bit on this stuff is that we have these terms. Like we've been saying for years here too. Well, the president, and the founder, and the scientist, and the technical advisor. And what do you do as a technical advisor? Well, I use Adobe Audition.
Don't forget the makeup artist.
Oh well, that's a whole different story. Go ahead, Blake.
Well, this is me again, yeah. So we're mystery solvers, and we all are, right? But we, as skeptics, or at least on our show, right? I mean, we like to dig in and find the mysteries. And outside the show, Kieran and Ben and myself, we do ridiculous amounts of research to find answers. And a lot of times we discover that the real mundane answer, and we're not looking for a mundane answer, it turns out that the answer is quite mundane if you do the research. And no one's bothered because the story without the research is so much more interesting. The story without the research is a ghost or a monster, And with the research, it turns out to be something else. So
yeah, and I mean, that really ties in with studying at least ghost hunting from our experience in general, because we've, again, we're going to be just bashing on TV, but it all ties together here. What we tell people all the time is, yeah, what you're seeing in an hour's time, yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting. But when you really get out there and do this work and spend 12 hours sitting in an allegedly haunted place doing nothing but recording or taking pictures, it isn't very exciting all the time.
No,
that's the reality
of boredom and the hours of analyzing boredom.
That's the reality of it, though. Go ahead, Doug.
I want to talk more. I want to take it away from that. I know that that's really interesting and everything, but I want to take it away from that because we happen to be going to the millionth annual, I don't remember what number. That's it, 8th annual Mothman Festival this upcoming weekend. And now the Mothman, I'm sure you're all familiar with the story. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, terrorized the town. Movie was made from it. Everybody loved it. Or whatever.
I have chapstick in my hand.
See? There you go. But we go to the festival, and the festival is a lot of fun. It's really interesting, and of course there is a downside to it in that, there was a bridge collapse there the year that the Mothman creature had its flurry of sightings, so it has a sad side as well.
Yeah.
But we celebrate I don't know what we celebrate. We party. Anyway, so we're going there. We're going to be talking about cryptozoology all next weekend. And so I'm wondering, though, what creatures really fascinate us and why? Why are these creatures that... and I mean, as many societies throughout the ages, there's always been creatures in our sociological stories, right? Why do they fascinate us so much? Why do they keep recurring? Why are they from all over the world? That's actually more of a Ben kind of question or series of questions, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. I mean, I think that, as you point out, people have always had a fascination with mythological creatures and fantastic, unusual beasts. Whether it's dragons, whether it's unicorns, Pegasus, The Cyclops, you go back to a lot of the, Greek myths and whatnot. So, there's always been this fascination with the unusual and the odd, and particularly when it comes to animals, because, if you see a strangely shaped rock or tree, it's a curiosity, but if you see a strangely shaped animal, that's sort of one step closer to us as people. And so, I think that these sorts of things have always held a fascination for people. And you don't need to look too far back into history when to find a time when a lot of these creatures many of them were actually believed to exist. I mean, there's in the culture and the times that we live in, most people realize that dragons don't exist and leprechauns and this and that. But if you only go back a few hundred years, very recently in human time, people, the world was far less explored, and people didn't know, what sort of creatures were out there, and a lot of the world was unmapped. At one point, they used to capture giraffes, and they used to tour around the early sideshows and circuses in the 1800s in America, advertising as camel leopards, sort of a cross between a camel and a leopard. So this is a giraffe, and again, you picture somebody in some small town in Pennsylvania who's doesn't have TV, probably doesn't have any way of getting any media, and so they see this long-necked weird creature, and so to somebody whose knowledge of the world was limited 150 years ago, it could be very plausible that these sorts of mythological creatures are living and breathing in darkest Africa or somewhere else.
Interesting, but then how does that, even in more modern times, because the Mothman was 1967, right? 1967, we did have television. We didn't have the internet, so people weren't zinging stories and twittering about it. But
I think to some extent the media promulgates a lot of the stories too. So I think really these stories spread better by a newspaper and the internet as much as by word of mouth. So I guess that helps it along a bit.
Well, it's also interesting to see how Mothman's evolved since the original stories. It seems like he used to be, red eyes with shoulders and no head, and now all the modern depictions of him seem to have a head sort of forming in the news story version. So it's like he's evolving as a mythological figure, even if there haven't been additional sightings.
Well, let's point out also, some people have taken, people we know. I'm sitting here looking at one actually hanging on the wall as we speak right now here in our studio. People have taken this idea of the Mothman and run with it. They've made comics out of this thing. So there's some more spices in the cauldron, I guess you could say, to kind of add more, like you're saying, Blake, where this whole image of the Mothman's being changed now. Of course, an artist's depiction of something, it's going to be it's going to be what they want it to look like.
Right, because there is an artistic license in order to further your story or your idea along. But that's a story or an idea, not I am a witness or I am a victim kind of thing.
But when somebody reads that, and
they could take it as that.
Does that happen?
Does that happen a lot?
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. It's going to prime them. I bet you this is a prediction that you'll see future sightings will start to look more and more like the art and less like the original sightings, because it's not the oral tradition that's being carried, it's the media tradition, which is much more easily accessible to witnesses.
Yeah. So
and that also happened in UFOs, flying saucers, and little green men. They were green for a long time before they became gray.
That's right. If you think like Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a giant injection, if you think about it, of the imagery of the Greys, right? So, lots and lots of people saw that film, and E.T. as well. Mm-hmm. And both of those things, I think, have a huge impact on the expectations people have for when they actually see their own aliens.
I think Karen was trying to say something. You back there, Karen? No, it's okay. You back there, Karen?
Tried to say a lot of things, but that's okay. There are 6 of us.
Oh, sorry.
I can't remember what it was in regards to, but I think you were just asking about what are popular creatures that we've been looking at, and I guess Bigfoot would definitely have to be the one that stands out for us and certainly appears in many different cultures. From my background in Australia, we have the Yowie, which is the Australian version of the Sasquatch or the Ape Man, the Abominable Snowman, etc. So I think in many ways our show's become in danger of becoming the Bigfoot show. It's just a very, very popular creature.
That isn't a bad thing, though, necessarily. I mean, I think that's very. I mean, if it was, well, I mean,
Bigfoot is a popular topic right now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it just hit the news. Remember? I mean, wasn't there a police officer in
that was a while. That was like last year.
It's still in living memory.
It was a year. It was a year ago in September and August of a year ago, and it also swamped the internet because people were really interested.
And how? Yeah, that was one of the workings of Tom Biscardi too, from what I remember. He was part of that whole thing. So, yeah, and that's a good. And that when we saw that, remember we were both at work when we saw that, if I'm correct.
Right.
And you're like, check this thing out, and we looked at that, and we both were kind of like, it looks like a Bigfoot suit or something.
But that's what we determined when we were still at work. But that's another example, Karen, is that how something like that can just take over and capture people's imaginations, and I think people need these cryptozoological ideas.
I guess that's true to some extent, and I'd like to broaden what Dr. Atlanta said earlier about the show and who we're trying to reach out to, and I guess it's really anyone who's interested in monsters, and that would be everyone, I would think, to some extent.
Yeah.
I would hope.
I think so, too.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Well, there's nothing... You guys, there's nothing more depressing, though. Like, I went down to not more depressing than cryptozoology, because I'm talking about ghost lights. I went down to a road in rural Indiana, and I thought, I'm going to see this ghost light, right? Everybody's been talking about this ghost light. So I went and I watched, and sure enough, there it was, and it was fascinating. But I didn't have enough time that first weekend, so I went back home. I dreamed about it. I thought, this is so cool. I'm going to go back. I went back the next weekend, and I had my friend drive on a road 2 miles away. And unfortunately, it's the headlights from this road 2 miles away. We were on our on our cell phones. I said, "Okay, flash your lights." And unfortunately, the ghost light would wink out and then turn back on. So obviously, there was a connection there. And that was really depressing when it turned out to be.
Hold on, let me interrupt you. Why was that? You say, unfortunately, to my mind, you solved a mystery. So that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Well, it was bittersweet, I should say, because at the same time, I was so excited to have seen this ghost light, right? But then when I found out that it was actually headlights, I was the opposite of excited.
Well, there's a sense of wonder. I think that's what your point is.
I lost my sense of wonder about it.
I think I can say with all confidence that Doug and myself's feet and Bonnie's feet are firmly on the ground. But there is that sense of wonder still out there. I think that attracts a lot of people to studying the paranormal or cryptozoology or UFOs or whatever it may be. And yeah, it is bittersweet because we've done that a couple times with certain things. We'll be figuring it out. Oh, that's the reason that happened.
Right.
And you're like, well, I'm really glad we come to the bottom of this thing, but wow, man.
And I'm really glad. I am, however, glad that I know. I'm glad that I know because I don't have to waste my time on any more of those kinds of ghost light sightings. And same thing with monsters. I think everybody should put in www.monstertalk.org into their browsers and get over there and hear more from Blake and Dr. Karen and Ben.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've run it right up to the end here, guys. And this is what we always do. We're going to have to figure something out one of these days.
We're going to have to get a time machine. That's what we have to do.
We're not going to like a 6-hour film. That's really all I have to say.
Well, no, unfortunately we do. We
thank you
end here, but yeah.
Thank you, you guys.
Don't jump off the line. Stay on the line.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no problem. Hang on the line. Don't leave us just yet, though. Okay, guys. Again, thanks to Ben Radford, Dr. Karen Stolzno. Did I do it right? Stolzno?
Stolzno. Yep.
And Blake Smith from Monster Talk, www.monstertalk.org. We made it happen. We got everybody out here and it works, so that's cool. So awesome. What do we got going on coming up here next?
Coming up next, Carlisle Bergquist from 10 Billion Beats.
Yeah,
what's all that about? I can't wait to find out.
Well, we had a couple of funny ideas about it, but
let it go.
No, we're not going to do that because he's a cool guy, and we're going to discuss this thing. So we'll do that right after the break here.
For more info, visit ghostlytalk.com.